to enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. From the age of 7, I had already laid my hands on the abacus. The instant the abacus beads clicked, I knew whether the count was accurate or not. At 14, I took charge of the dowry shop my late mother had left behind. 3 years later, the profits had doubled. Father patted my ledgers and sighed to the clan elders, "What a pity she is a daughter. One who is too clever is easily wounded, one who calculates too well will inevitably have thin fortune." I still remember the day he said those words. Outside the window, my stepmother was coaxing my younger brother to eat the newly tributed honey, sweet tangerines. Their cloyingly sweet fragrance drifted into the room. I closed the account book and smiled faintly. Whether fortune is thin or abundant must be calculated first to know. Thus, when father decided to marry me to Hua Xing, the Northwest general who had lost the battle, been stripped to his title, and banished back to the capital in disgrace, waiting for others to trample him into the mud, I spent the entire night working my abacus. By morning, I gave my answer. The noisy clamor beyond the courtyard wall was shut out by the vermilion gates, splitting the world into 2 separate realms. In the front hall, the music of lutes and flutes never ceased. That was my stepmother's birthday banquet. Xianxia knelt at my feet, sobbing so hard her shoulders trembled. "Miss, you cannot accept that invitation. It is a pit of fire." In my hand I held a gilded marriage contract. The groom's side was the Jingbei Marquis Hua Xing, or, more precisely, the former Jingbei Marquis. 1 month earlier, news of the Northwest defeat had swept in. The commanding general Hua Xing had been stripped of his title and placed under house arrest, with the Marquis' manor sealed. This engagement had been arranged back when the Hu family still stood in glory. At the time, my grandfather had begged father to petition grandmother so the families could form an alliance. Now it had become a hot potato father and my stepmother were desperate to discard, and the perfect excuse to deal with me, the legitimate eldest daughter who had long been an eyesore. A pit of fire. I let go. The marriage contract fluttered to the tiled floor. "Xianxia, look around this manor. Where is there not a pit of fire?" Father loathed me because my face was too much like my early, deceased mother's, forever reminding him of the debt in his heart. My stepmother hated me because I occupied the position of legitimate eldest daughter, blocking the road for her own blood daughter. If I remained here, the best outcome would be to be casually married to some old capital official as a second wife. My dowry used to fund my stepmother's daughter's grand wedding. But General Hu can barely protect himself, and the emperor's will is impossible to predict. If you marry into that house, miss, I'm afraid. Afraid of what? I bent down, picked up the contract, and slowly smoothed every crease. Afraid I will simply die together with him. I stepped before the mirror, gazed at my reflection, and slowly curved my lips into a faint smile. "Xianxia, do you know," I said looking into the mirror, "sometimes being bound to a man who is clearly doomed is safer than living among the living. At least no one would care if an insignificant woman stood beside a man already walking toward death." From the front hall drifted my stepmother's affected laughter, laced with hypocritical congratulations on my good fortune. I folded the marriage contract and slipped it into my sleeve. "Go deliver the reply," I told Xianxia, voice calm. "I accept this marriage." There were no wedding horns, no red silk banners. A small, slightly worn red sedan quietly stopped at the side gate of the Hu manor. The gilded plaque that once read, Jingbei Marquis Manor, had been pried off the gate frame, leaving 4 glaring white scars. The sedan curtain lifted. I stepped down the footstool. The hand that steadied me was Xianxia's, cold and trembling. In the courtyard, weeds grew past the ankles. Half the red lacquer on the corridors had peeled away, exposing rotten wood beneath. An old servant shuffled out from the shadow of a corridor pillar. Seeing me descend, he staggered forward. His lips quivered several times before he managed to speak. "Madam, the master is in the main hall. The main door is wide open." I stepped inside. The hall was empty. The ancestral altar lay under a thick layer of dust. The wall above was bare. Even the ancestral portraits had been removed. Only one man stood there with his back to the door, facing the cold void. Hearing movement, he turned. Hua Xing. His crimson robe made his complexion look even paler. A fresh scar ran from the left corner of his forehead down to the edge of his brow, crusted with dark, brown scabs. His frame was tall, yet so thin it seemed hollow. Those eyes weighed heavy, like the sky before a blizzard. "Song Qingmo," he spoke, voice hoarse and rough. "It is I. He took 2 steps forward and held out a wooden box, opening it before me. I accepted it and unlatched the lid. Inside were no gold, silver, or jewels, only 3 things: a jade pendant with slightly chipped corners, a thin stack of banknotes of varying denominations, and, at the bottom, a folded pawn ticket. The jade pendant was left by my mother. The banknotes total 826 taels. Everything I could sell, including the 2 old suits of armor that followed me for years. He spoke slowly, each word weighed with care. The pawn ticket is for those 2 armors. His gaze fell on my face, leaving only desolate calm behind. Miss Song, as you can see, Huo is now a criminal awaiting judgment, hands empty, future unknown. Perhaps tomorrow Imperial cavalry will arrive at the gate to arrest me. This marriage should never have been considered. Everything in this box is the complete betrothal gift I can offer. Take it and leave at once. Consider the contract null and void. From this moment, you and I are settled. Once you step out this door, no one will accuse you of breaking faith or abandoning righteousness. Wind from the broken window swirled in, scattering dust across the altar and fluttering the corner of the pawn ticket in the box I held. I closed the lid and asked my question. After he finished speaking, he clearly had not expected my reaction. He simply stared at me in silence. I walked to the ancestral altar, drew the thin marriage contract from my sleeve, tore it cleanly in 2, and tossed both halves onto the dusty surface. Then I turned to face him and pushed the wooden box, containing his entire remaining fortune, back into his arms. Armor is the backbone of a military general. I looked straight into his suddenly contracting pupils, voice clear. The backbone cannot be pawned. The marriage contract was the token between the Song and Hu families. I have now torn away the Song family's half. I paused, drew a breath of air thick with dust and old decay. Now we are the same, Hua Xing. Both of us have only half a life left. I looked at the desolate wilderness in his eyes. Do you want to try? Stitch these 2 lives together and gamble for a path to survival. In the silent main hall, my heartbeat quickened, but I forced it down beneath my cold mask. Hua Xing stared at me without blinking, as though trying to pierce every calculation inside. He clutched the wooden box, posture stiff. In the dim light, his originally refined features were sharpened by that scar into something fiercer. After a long while he spoke again, voice even hoarser. Gamble. With what? He asked. With everything you still have left. I replied, taking half a step closer. The name of Hua Xing, the Jinbi Marquis, has not yet been struck from the Ministry of War's roster. The scattered remnants of your former subordinates still linger under your banner across the realm. You must still remember their names. In the Northwest Army, 1 or 2 old soldiers yet recall your face and once received your kindness. His fists clenched tight. You wish to use my name, I corrected. It is the influence that remains. A dead tiger still carries its might, let alone you, who are only injured, not yet dead. The words were nearly vicious, yet in the desolate depths of his eyes a faint spark flickered. And after that? He asked. After that I will turn it into silver, grain, intelligence, and opportunity. I drew several carefully bound account books from the pouch at my side and set them on the altar. These are my dowry, the 2 silk shops of the Song family in Jiangnan, 2 estates on the capital outskirts, the true ledgers of the past few years, and a few secret routes my mother left behind that few know of. His gaze swept across the elegant regular script on the covers, then returned to my face. Your mother came from a merchant family, he noted. Skilled in management and trade, I continued. She died of illness at 31, leaving enough dowry for me to live in comfort my whole life. Unfortunately, after 10 years in my father's hands, 80% had already vanished. Under my stepmother's management for another 3 years, of the remaining 20%, less than half has truly reached me. I pointed at the wooden box in his arms. Therefore, your 826 taels are not little in my eyes, they are clean startup capital, belonging entirely to you and to us. He lingered on those 2 words, cooperation. I spoke to them plainly. You contribute your remaining power and influence, handling open arrows and hidden blades from outside. When necessary, use military methods to clear obstacles. I contribute my skills and schemes, responsible for generating wealth, gathering supplies, and collecting intelligence. Profits will be split 50-50. Accounts will be checked daily. No deception between us. I paused, then added firmly, if you feel my methods are improper or endanger your life, you may stop at any time. If I believe you are stubbornly conservative and cutting off our path to survival, I may also take my share and leave. the engagement will be automatically voided. In truth, this was no longer a marriage contract, it was a stark cooperation agreement. Hua Xing remained silent for a long time. He walked to the altar, picked up the top ledger, and flipped through it at random. Inside were meticulous figures, purchase prices, selling prices, market fluctuations, shop assistant wages, even tolls at every checkpoint, every detail, great or small, recorded clearly. Beside certain numbers were tiny, elegant red script annotations analyzing advantages and risks. He studied them for a moment, then closed the book. Song Qing Mo. He spoke my name again. This time the probing tone was gone, only complicated emotion remained. What exactly do you seek? Simply to survive. I looked toward the doorway. Dusk had deepened. The last sliver of light on the horizon had been swallowed. Survival was only the lowest requirement. I turned back and met the depths of his eyes directly. What I want is for those who took what belonged to me to spit it back exactly as they took it. For those who trampled us into the mud to watch helplessly as we rise again from the place they believed impossible. Hua Xing, are you willing to rot and die slowly in this ruined house, bearing the stigma of a defeated general, waiting for either poisoned wine or a white silk cord as your reward? His eyes snapped upward. In that desolate wilderness a long-suppressed fire seemed to pry open a crack. Not willing. The two words burst between his teeth, carrying the scent of blood. Good. I nodded. I extended my hand, palm upward, suspended in midair. Then our contract takes effect from this moment. He looked at my hand, then into my eyes. Finally his rough, calloused palm, marked with thin scars, settled heavily atop mine. Under the oil lamp, the ledgers were spread out. I counted out 100 taels. The remainder, together with the jade pendant, was locked inside a small wooden box. There were 2 keys. Hua Xing and I each kept one. The visiting card at the bottom of the box was for him to take himself. Hua Xing pushed open the window. A gray sparrow on a dead branch in the courtyard startled and flew away. Half an incense stick earlier, a plain carriage had stopped at the mouth of the alley. The person inside had glanced this way twice. I opened the visiting card, tucked it into my sleeve. That's enough. Is the carriage still waiting? It has gone. Hua Xing turned. From behind a broken water jar in the corner he dragged out a half-conscious man and flung him to the ground. The man wore coarse cloth, face smeared with mud. Only now did he groan. He had tailed the carriage with light steps, a spy. My heart chilled, the movement had been swift. Hua Xing planted his foot on the man's wrist. Who sent you? The man gritted his teeth and stayed silent. Hua Xing ground down harder, the joints gave a faint crack. The man screamed, cold sweat streaming. Spare me. It was Manager Wu of the Yongfeng pawnshop who ordered this lowly one to watch. He said if this house were to be sold, he must be the first to know. Yongfeng pawnshop. I remembered the header on that pawn ticket. Hua Xing lifted his foot, fished several copper coins from his chest, and tossed them onto the man's face. Scram. Tell that fool that in a few days Hu will personally redeem the armor at market price and pay double the interest. The man scrambled up and fled. Double the interest. I raised a brow. Even if given 10 times the courage, he would not dare accept. Hua Xing pulled down the well rope and began drawing water to wash his hands. Yet he would let those words spread to the ears of those who needed to hear them. I understood. A defeated general who could not even redeem his own armor was truly finished. Daring to announce he would pay extra to reclaim old armor was telling the shadows that the tiger's skin was not yet dead and its claws could still be sharpened. How long? I asked. The person in that carriage will first investigate the Yongfeng pawnshop. Only after that will they decide the next move. He flicked water from his hands. Go sell the goods in West City. The air there is murky and unpleasant. I wore no face, covering veil, only had Xiaoju clutch the bundle tightly and follow. I stepped into the Jiajuji shop at the street corner. The plump shopkeeper Zhu Zhenggui was sighing in despair over his accounts. Shopkeeper, inspect the goods. I placed the visiting card on the counter. Zhu Zhenggui picked it up, his hand shook violently. The Jingbei Marquise, outside the city at the 9 Li embankment, 230 military sheep pelts with arrow holes and wolf pelts with knife marks. The tanning technique belongs to the border army. I spoke rapidly, giving him no time to think. One price 700 taels, silver paid on the spot. You may inspect the goods. Zhu Zhenggui's fat cheeks twitched. Miss, that price if the silver does not arrive at the 9 Li embankment before noon, I will find another buyer. I retrieved the card and turned to leave. Wait. Zhu Zhenggui hurried after me, voice lowered. Miss, to be honest, this batch is scalding hot. The current Marquis who, he glanced left and right, then pulled me into the shadow beneath the eaves. When a tree falls, the monkeys scatter. The Ministry of War is watching. These military wolf pelts are listed as losses in the books. Today I accept them. Tomorrow I may be charged with privately embezzling military supplies and colluding with a criminal. This is not business. It is a disaster that could bring confiscation and extermination. I listened in silence until his fear had run its course. I understood shopkeeper Ju's dilemma. Therefore I had not come merely to sell. At least not in the ordinary way. Fine sweat beaded on his plump face. He looked at me doubtfully. This batch bears the marks of the Northwest Border Army and the battlefield. No one in the capital dares openly, but some dare to conceal them. I lowered my voice, each word distinct. I do not want 700 taels. I want only 400 taels of silver in hand, plus the secondary, grade hides in your warehouse, the damp, half-moldy batch you plan to discard. Zhu Zhenggui was stunned. Miss, those second-grade goods are worth almost nothing. What do you need them for? You need not concern yourself. I will still hand over the 400 taels plus those secondary goods to you, but you must help me stage one scene. I looked straight into his eyes. I know you have channels to launder these hides, erase the military traces, divide them, mix them with ordinary pelts, and ship them south. Jiangnan is prosperous. People there cannot recognize northern wind and snow marks. They only judge quality. The profit will more than cover your risk and still leave you a handsome gain. His throat bobbed, the words had struck home, yet he still hesitated. The risk remains too great. What if? I cut him off bluntly. Deepest in your warehouse lies a pile of raw ox hides. Beneath them is pressed a batch of old saddle fittings discarded last year by the Armory Bureau of the Ministry of War. Though worn, possessing them is a death sentence. You secretly repair and refurbish them, then mix them into civilian steel saddles to sell. You have done this more than once, have you not? Zhu Zhenggui's face drained of color, his lips trembled. I will not expose you and you will not block my path. My voice softened. 400 taels plus the secondary goods in exchange for your safety. And for me a starting point. You can do the math. He slumped against the corridor pillar, panting, then gritted his teeth. Fine, but let me say first, once it is in my hands, the deal is done. If anything happens later it has nothing to do with you. At noon, after the silver transaction at the 9 Li embankment was completed, on the river embankment thick with wild grass, Hua Xing watched people from Zhu's shop load the wolf pelts, still carrying a faint scent of blood and traces of wind and frost, onto the carriage. Old Scar stood silently beside him. The silver chest and several large bundles of secondary, grade sheepskin smelling of damp mold were left behind. Hua Xing lightly kicked the pile of secondary goods. Just exchanged for this much. These are the truly important ones. At that moment I opened the silver chest, took out roughly 100 taels and pushed them toward old Scar. Scar uncle, I trouble you to find a few trustworthy brothers. Not many, 3 to 5 will suffice. Use this money at places like New Shiku or the horse market to buy or rent a small stall. Sell charcoal, transport goods, work as porters, anything. Only one task, keep your ears open and listen for any drunken truths or secret grievances in the capital regarding the Northwest battle. Old Scar cupped his hands firmly, asked no questions, took the silver, and vanished into the weeds. With the remaining 300 taels I turned to Hua Xing. Buy old grain, buy bran, buy distillers' grains from breweries, wherever cheap and inconspicuous. Along with this pile of secondary sheepskins, transport everything out of the city. Hua Xing's gaze was deep. Transport where? For what purpose? To the abandoned mines in the western mountains, any desolate, hidden place. The sheepskins, though inferior, can still provide some warmth after processing. The grain, though coarse, mixed with wild herbs is enough to sustain life. I continued. Around the capital outskirts, the old soldiers you disbanded have nowhere to go. Surely some still remember your kindness. Give them a corner so they do not freeze or starve to death. They will become our eyes and nails, no need for them to gather, simply let them know the old master's banner has not completely fallen. His hands clasped behind his back slowly tightened. His voice sank low. Do you know what crime it is to secretly shelter people, even if only harboring remnants of defeated soldiers? I know. I nodded. Therefore we are not sheltering them privately, but allowing displaced commoners to gather for livelihood. We only provide some rags, scraps and leftovers no one else wants. not enough to constitute a crime, yet enough to preserve a thread of sentiment. I spoke slowly, and this sentiment is more useful than silver. Zhu Zhenggui fears the wolf pelts because they are clearly recorded in the books. What we are doing is underground. Hua Xing stared silently at the glittering river surface. After a long while he said, "You wish to trade the hottest goods for the most ordinary beginning. A towering pavilion is built from the ground up." I closed the silver chest. "Your defeat was not a natural disaster. My father's schemes are not confined to the inner residence either. Sooner or later these two paths will intertwine. What we must do first is pull ourselves out of the mud and stand firm." He turned his head. The scar on his face stood out sharply under the midday sun. "And once we find them." I gently stroked the rough edge of the silver chest, voice calm. "Once we find them, whoever owes must repay, whoever needs settling will be settled. However they took from us, they must return it the same way." The river wind swept past, carrying dry grass. Hua Xing's voice was heavy. "Song Qing Mo." As you wish." That night the old servant prepared a simple meal. At the table Hua Xing pushed the jade pendant toward me. "Keep it. This is the deposit for our contract." And Hua Xing's sincerity. The jade felt warm and smooth against my palm. The chipped spot had been polished glossy from repeated touching. I did not refuse. I tied it around my neck and hid it close to my body. Outside the window, pale moonlight emanated the desolate courtyard and dry well. Two people cast off the chessboard by fate, yet the board remained. We would place the pieces back ourselves. After the transaction was complete, the capital remained outwardly calm for the next several days. The Hu Manor was still as cold and empty as before, but small changes, like underground springs, began to rise quietly. Old Scar used 80 taels to purchase a nearly bankrupt charcoal shop near Neoshiku. Two old soldiers Miss Her Fingers became shopkeeper and assistant. The shop sat in a remote spot. Business was poor, yet it faced the rear gate of a major north-south trading firm, the Yulong trading firm. Carriages of goods, errand runners, drunken managers, all fell into the quiet gaze of the charcoal shop's assistant. Through Zhu Zhenggui's intermittent channels I caught fragments of news. The brother-in-law of a supervisor in the Armory Bureau had recently enjoyed a lucky streak at the gambling house. An outer residence belonging to a director in the Ministry of Revenue had newly acquired many exquisite Zhongnan furnishings. The vague origins of those pieces all pointed toward old ledgers concerning grain and weapons shipments to the northwest. As for Hua Xing, he used the coarse grain and inferior hides already transported to the abandoned western mountain mines. Gradually he gathered 8 or 9 wounded soldiers who were nearly beggars. They resembled hibernating beasts, huddling in wind-sheltered corners, eating the coarsest food, keeping a few bundles of hides to ward off the cold. They spoke little and did not gather, yet the dim, dead light in their eyes slowly kindled into a faint gleam. One deep night old Scar returned quietly to the manor, bringing a piece of news. The deputy shopkeeper of the Yulong trading firm, after drinking the day before, had let slip in his curses that the people in the Department of Public Revenue had hearts too black, even plundering the funeral expenses of a defeated general. Old Scar's voice was hoarse. He even mentioned last year's urgent shipment of thick cotton to the northwest. In reality it was stuffed entirely with old reed cotton inside, yet the approval slips passed through unusually fast. The one who had signed off on it was Vice Minister Wang. Hua Xing's pupils contracted sharply. Wang Bi, Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. Exactly, Old Scar said. He is also the same Vice Minister Wang who has recently been in extremely close contact with the madam's maternal family. In the candlelit room, I looked toward Hua Xing. There was not a trace of surprise on his face, only a cold, quiet understanding. "It seems we've found the thread," I said softly. That Vice Minister Wang was connected to the Ministry of Revenue's coordination of military supplies, linked to the schemes brewing in my father's inner residence, and tied directly to the urgent shipment of thick cotton during Hua Xing's defeat. The very supplies that had left soldiers freezing to death in the snow. A blood-soaked thread had finally revealed a corner from within the dense pile of bones. Hua Xing stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the pitch-black courtyard. The abnormal grain transport route that Zhang Meng investigated at the very end. The approval documents that allowed passage. I remember one of the signing officials was also surnamed Wang. His voice was as cold as ice. "Tomorrow, I will go meet this Vice Minister Wang." In the identity of an unknown soldier who luckily survived the Northwest battlefield, returning with a few battlefield secrets to trade for a way to live. Old scar. He turned to the silent old soldier. Arrange it properly. Make it look real. My heart gave a small jolt. For him to go personally meant placing himself back in the enemy's sights. The risk would skyrocket. This plan is too dangerous, I said, voice steady as I analyzed the pros and cons. If Wang Bai is truly involved, he will be like a bird frightened by a bent bough. If you suddenly probe him with old matters, his first reaction will likely not be to slip up, but to kill and silence the witness. Hua Xing did not turn around. Do you have a faster way? No. I answered frankly, but we must have a retreat route. You cannot meet him directly as a common soldier. That would be too deliberate. We need a more natural pretext, one harder to trace afterward. I thought quickly. Zhou Zhenggui once mentioned that the brother-in-law of Vice Minister Wang is obsessed with gambling and has been spending lavishly lately. Perhaps you could pose as a fallen soldier who has just returned from the northwest, holding a few battlefield souvenirs you want to sell for money. At the same time, you accidentally let slip some peripheral information through the gambling house's ears and eyes, then let that brother-in-law pass the message along. That way, even if Wang Bai grows suspicious, the first person he will suspect is the gambling house and that useless brother-in-law of his. Finally, Hua Xing turned around. Candlelight cast shifting shadows across his face. You've already thought this far ahead. Since we are now allies, it is only natural to calculate every step thoroughly. I looked at him, my voice without ripples. Your safety concerns the entire situation. It is not worth gambling everything on a single probe. What we need is to make him move, make him panic, and force him to expose his own flaws. Not throw ourselves out as targets. He stared at me for a long moment. The probing look in his eyes gradually gave way to an even deeper, colder layer of calculation. Follow your plan. Have Old Scar arrange the connections at the gambling house. I nodded slightly. I will also find a way to probe the recent movements of Vice Minister Wang from my father's side to cross-reference the two paths. 2 days later, in a private room at the back of the Rui gambling house in a dark alley near Niushi-ku, Hua Xing disguised himself as a destitute and unlucky man. His face was sallow, eyes dull, knuckles thick and calloused, the perfect image of a discharged border soldier. He, accidentally, lost an old belt to Li Yong's attendant, Li Yong being Vice Minister Wang's brother-in-law. The token on the belt had dark bloodstains along its edge and a faded engraved serial number. Damn luck, only trash like this. The attendant muttered, about to throw it away. Hua Xing hurriedly stopped him, his voice carrying a thick northwest accent. Don't be so quick to disdain it, sir. I pulled this off a frozen corpse. Who knows, it might sell as an antique. I also know a few things. Last year at Hu Ridge, I saw one of our grain caravans taking the wrong route. He spoke haltingly, eyes flickering with fear and greed. The perfect look of a small man wanting to trade secrets for money yet terrified of inviting disaster. Li Yong's attendant had not cared at first, but the moment he heard, grain caravan taking the wrong route, he thought of his brother-in-law's recent foul mood and his heart jumped. He clutched the belt token, looked Hua Xing over twice more, then tossed down a few copper coins. Scram, scram, don't bring bad luck here. The news was like a dying ember that had finally been touched by a spark. That same afternoon, in the rear courtyard of the Song Manor, I sat below my stepmother and listened as she spoke with feigned sincerity. King Mo, it's not that mother wants to lecture you, but since you've married into the Huo family, you should behave with more propriety. Hua Xing is now a criminal. If you keep running back to your maternal home, what will people say? It will also implicate your father's reputation in court. She lifted her teacup and continued meaningfully. The other day, the wife of the Wang family even asked about you. She said your current situation is difficult. If you need anything, the Wang family can show some consideration on account of your father. The word, consideration, carried heavy implications. I lowered my eyes. Many thanks to Mother and Madame Wang for their concern. The Hu manor may be plain, but it is peaceful. As for the Wang family, father and Vice Minister Wang serve in the same court. It is only natural for both sides to look after each other. I wonder though, has Vice Minister Wang been well lately? The Northwest matter has implicated so many people. I heard the Ministry of Revenue has been extremely busy. My stepmother's eyes flickered. She set down her teacup. Court affairs are not something women of the inner residence should discuss. Your father knows his limits. She changed the subject. On the contrary, you don't look well. Yu, go fetch that old ginseng root of mine and give it to the eldest young miss to nourish her body. She was probing me. Giving me tonics was both a reminder that my body was weak and I should cause less trouble, and a subtle warning that the Song family still controlled my expenditures. I accepted it calmly. Thank you, mother. When I left, I happened to encounter my father returning from court at the second gate. He stood with his hands behind his back, glanced at me, and spoke indifferently. How has Hua Xing been lately? Closed doors, self-reflection. Everything is normal, I replied. He gave a noncommittal grunt, then added as if casually. Vice Minister Wang mentioned the other day that the military supply accounts for the Northwest may have some unclear areas. It seems some petty individuals have embezzled funds, and the implications are wide. Tell Hua Xing to behave himself and stop causing more trouble. Reopening old matters benefits no one. My heart grew even colder, but I maintained a respectful expression. Your daughter understands. Late that night, in the study of the Hu Manor, Hua Xing had washed away his disguise. He summarized what had happened at the gambling house. Although Li Yong's attendant didn't say much, his expression changed the moment he heard about the grain caravan taking the wrong route. He will definitely pass that belt token to Li Yong, and Li Yong will very likely take it to Wang Bei. I then recounted my father's exact words from my visit to the Song Manor, especially the warning not to cause more trouble and not to bring up old matters. A short silence fell in the room. Wang Bei truly knows. I broke the silence first. Moreover, he and my father are working together. They are afraid. Afraid you will dig deeper. Afraid the Northwest accounts will be overturned. My father's warning was both to protect himself and to pass a message on behalf of Wang Bei. Or rather, on behalf of their entire circle. Hua Xing walked to the crude table where he had built a rough terrain model of the Northwest using mud and pebbles. Yahoo Ridge. He pointed at a spot. That is where Zhang Meng disappeared. If that grain caravan truly took the wrong route, it could only have circled around the forward camp's supply point. His finger slid to a valley marked with a gourd symbol. Directly delivering supplies to the enemy. The last two words carried the weight of 1,000 caddies. Wang Bei handled the approval documents. Your father likely provided the convenience, and may even have taken a share of the profits. I continued. That is why my dowry and the Hu family's assets were so hastily divided by them. It was not only adding insult to injury, but also to cover up any holes that might appear and silence those who knew too much. We looked at each other. The same conclusion was reflected in both our eyes. This was a web, and the ones who wove it stood in high positions of power. Hua Xing's voice sank. Next, they will kill to silence witnesses. All those who fell from grace and could bring back information from the Northwest, including me at the gambling house today, could become targets. I added, they will also try to strike from within again. For example, by pressuring me or using the Song family to pin new crimes on you. Risk and danger had never been far away. The candle flame suddenly flared, blooming into a large flower of fire. Hua Xing raised his hand as if to trim the wick, but suddenly stopped. He looked at me, his gaze lingering on my slightly pale face, and frowned faintly. Going to the Song Manor today was not easy. He spoke as if stating a fact rather than asking a question. I was momentarily stunned. I had not expected him to notice this detail. My stepmother only did her usual act of beating the grass to warn the snake. Father's warning will not stop at mere words. He turned, rummaged deep in a cabinet, and placed a small ceramic jar on the table. Old Scar found some wild bee honey mixed with calming herbs. The jar was rough but very clean. I felt a trace of surprise. Since we began cooperating, we had only ever discussed the overall situation and schemes. There had never been any gesture this close to actual care. Thank you. I accepted it. You must be careful too. If Wang Bei truly grows suspicious, his retaliation will not be slow. Understood. He gave a short reply, but his gaze fell on the distant table again. Tomorrow I will have Old Scar move the soldiers at Western Mountain deeper into hiding. As for you, he paused for a beat. If it is not necessary, try not to return to the Song Manor for now. If something urgent arises, have Xia Ju find Old Wu, the pancake seller at the western corner gate. He is one of my former subordinates. This is an exchange. He gave me a jar of calming honey. I gave him a secret communication channel. It had nothing to do with romance. Rather, in the midst of danger, it was a quiet back-to-back trust slowly taking shape. Understood. I tightened my grip on the ceramic jar slightly. Outside the window, the wind grew fiercer. The chessboard had just been opened, and the opponent had already shown their ferocity. Yet in our hands, we finally had a few pieces we could play. Sentiment too, in this blade-sharp situation, quietly grew sharper through wordless concern and trust, unshowy, unproclaimed, but undeniably real. 5 days later, a fire broke out at a cheap inn outside Neoshiku, burning 2 vagrants who had supposedly just returned from the northwest to death. The authorities quickly ruled it an accident caused by drunkenness knocking over an oil lamp. Old Scar's people reported that before the fire started, several burly, unfamiliar men had been seen lurking nearby. Meanwhile, Liang of the Roye gambling house had claimed illness for several days and refused to leave his residence. His attendant had also vanished without a trace. Wang Bai had made his move. He was cleaning up every possible source of leaks. Hua Xing stood before the study window, his voice cold and hard. Crude methods, both a warning and an eradication of witnesses. I flipped through the latest intelligence Old Scar had sent from the abandoned mine outside the western suburbs. Among the old soldiers we had placed, one recognized that one of the 2 dead vagrants had once been his comrade. He had been discharged due to injury and had indeed known some suspicious details about the military supply transport line. The enemy's reaction had confirmed our suspicions and simultaneously revealed their impatience and ruthlessness. The more anxious they became, the more flaws they would expose. I set the paper down. Today father sent another message, asking me to return home to visit my stepmother. His tone was even heavier than last time. It seems the Wang family has increased pressure on him. Perhaps they believe that controlling me will allow them to restrain you. Hua Xing turned around, his gaze settling on my face. What do you plan to do? Take advantage of their plan, I said, meeting his eyes directly. I will return once more and see exactly what they intend. I may even be able to probe their true strength. I only need someone outside to provide support in case they truly try to detain me in desperation. Hua Xing remained silent for a moment, then walked to the wall and took down a dagger that hung there. The sheath was old and worn, but the blade glinted with cold light. He handed the dagger to me. Take it with you. Old Scar will arrange people outside the Song Manor. If you have not come out after 2 watches, or if you send the signal, they will create chaos and bring you out. He looked at me, voice low and heavy. Put yourself first in all things. The dagger felt somewhat heavy in my hand and still carried a trace of warmth from his fingertips. This level of concern had long surpassed what was necessary between mere allies. Understood. I did not refuse. I carefully slipped the dagger into the hidden pocket of my sleeve. You must be extremely careful as well. Wang Bai dared to silence those vagrants. There is no guarantee he won't use even more sinister methods against you. A marquis who has already lost his title. They still don't have the guts to act openly against me. Hua Xing said, a fierce glint flashing in his eyes. But hidden arrows are hard to guard against. I will be careful. The next time I stepped into the Song Manor, the atmosphere was completely different from before. My stepmother's illness was not serious. She simply leaned against the bed, holding my hand and sighing repeatedly. Every word, whether spoken or implied, revolved around one thing. King Mo, do you know how terrible the rumors outside have become? Everyone is saying that Hua Xing is unwilling to accept his defeat and is secretly contacting his old subordinates to plot something sinister. This is a crime that warrants the extermination of an entire clan. My father, on the other hand, met me directly in the study after dismissing all servants. Last night Vice Minister Wang was assassinated. The moment he opened his mouth, it was like a thunderbolt. His eyes stared fixedly at me. Fortunately he had strong guards and only suffered injury to his arm. The assassin has not been caught yet, but the arrow used appears to be of military make. My heart turned cold, yet my face showed appropriate shock. What does father mean? Surely you don't suspect Hua Xing. It is not that I suspect him, but that someone wants to direct suspicion toward him. Father suddenly slammed the table. At the scene, they found a torn protective talisman. The stitching is crude and very similar to those made by family members of Northwest border soldiers. Vice Minister Wang has already entered the palace overnight to petition the emperor, requesting a strict investigation into Hua Xing and his old subordinates. It is a perfect frame-up. A chain of schemes first clear the outer circle, then directly drag the disaster onto Hua Xing, accusing him of harboring resentment and assassinating a court minister. Do you believe Hua Xing would do something so foolish? I asked, suppressing the rapid beating of my heart. Whether I believe it or not doesn't matter. Father took a step closer, lowering his voice until each word stabbed like a knife. What matters is whether His Majesty will suspect him. King Mo, your father asks you one last time. Do you want to follow Hua Xing onto this ship that is destined to sink, die together with him, or withdraw while you still can? Vice Minister Wang has already said that as long as you are willing to step forward and testify that Hua Xing truly spoke resentful words and secretly contacted others, he will guarantee your safety. He will even allow you and Hua Xing to divorce so you can return home and remarry. Finally the dagger was revealed. They not only wanted Hua Xing dead, they wanted me, his wife, to become the final knife that stabbed him in the back. I looked at the naked calculation and coercion in my father's eyes. The short dagger hidden in my sleeve sent a chill through the fabric. The last faint hope I held toward familial affection was completely extinguished. Father. I opened my mouth slowly, my voice eerily calm. Once a daughter marries into the Hu family, she becomes a person of the Hu family. Whether Hua Xing is guilty or not will be decided by the laws of the court and the judgment of the Son of Heaven. Your daughter is foolish and does not dare speak recklessly, much less make false accusations against her husband. My father's face instantly turned ashen. You stubbornly refuse to understand. Do you know the consequences of defying orders? Your daughter knows. Either die together with Hua Xing, or die of illness in the rear courtyard of the Song Manor. I raised my eyes to look at him. But father, have you and Vice Minister Wang truly left no traces at all? The grain caravans in the northwest, the suspicious events at Hu Ridge, the disappearance of Scout Zhang Meng, and even that northwest protective talisman that should never have appeared at the scene of Vice Minister Wang's assassination. With every sentence, my father's face grew paler. If father forces your daughter too far, I gently flicked my sleeve. Then your daughter may have no choice but to write down everything she knows and everything she suspects into a formal petition. While it may not be enough to reach the emperor's ears, there will always be ways for the right people to see a portion of it. If Hua Xing falls, who will be the next person pushed out to take the blame and quell the emperor's wrath? It was a naked threat, using my insignificant position to gamble that they had guilty consciences and would not dare let the matter completely explode beyond recovery. The study fell deathly silent. My father's chest heaved violently. He pointed at me for a long time without being able to speak. Finally, defeated, he waved his hand, voice hoarse. Get out. Get out. From today onward, the Song family has no daughter like you. I knelt and performed a proper salute, then turned and left. By the time I safely returned to the Hu Manor, night had completely fallen. Hua Xing had been waiting in the study the entire time. Under the candlelight, the veins in his eyes were clearly bloodshot. When he saw me return unharmed, the rigid tension in his shoulders eased slightly. I recounted everything that had happened in the Song Manor, my father's words, Wang Bai's assassination and the subsequent framing, and my final threat, without omitting a single detail. He remained silent for a very long time after listening. The candle flames danced in his deep eyes. You shouldn't have provoked him like that, he finally said, his tone complicated. Vice Minister Song is a ruthless man. When pushed to a dead end, he truly could kill you. I continued, smiling faintly. But he is even more afraid of mutual destruction. He doesn't dare gamble on how much I know, and he certainly doesn't dare gamble whether I have left behind contingencies. This is the weakness of petty people. A barefoot man fears nothing from one wearing shoes. Right now, we have completely severed the road back to the Song family, but we have also forced them to temporarily refrain from acting rashly. Hua Xing walked up to me. The distance was so close I could clearly see the exhaustion between his brows and the suppressed flames of fury in his eyes. His voice grew hoarse. Today Old Scar discovered something. A low-ranking clerk from the Ministry of War, who once spoke up for Zhang Meng, fell into a well and died last night. They called it another accident. Another life lost, I said. The more they act this way, the more it proves we are on the right track. I looked up at him. Hua Xing, what exactly happened at Hu Ridge that year? What did Zhang Meng discover that got him killed? Was your defeat caused by more than just the military supplies being tampered with and the rotes being leaked? Was there an even more fatal betrayal? This was something I had wanted to ask for a long time. Now that we had faced life and death crises together, the time had finally come. Hua Xing closed his eyes. His Adam's apple moved slightly. When he opened his eyes again, they were filled with pain and bone, chilling cold. Yehu Ridge. We originally held the terrain advantage and planned to use stillness to control movement. His voice was low, as though he had returned to that snow-filled battlefield. But the military orders we received kept changing, revised from morning to evening, exhausting the troops as they ran back and forth. Grain supplies were delayed again and again. Winter clothing was as thin as paper. Meanwhile, the enemy seemed to know our deployment perfectly, always striking at our weakest points. He clenched his fists. Zhang Meng was my most capable scouting leader. He risked his life to infiltrate the enemy's rear and managed to send back only 8 words. The military orders are fake. There is a ghost in the army. The evidence he sacrificed everything to bring back was a half-burned fragment of a troop deployment order. The seal on it was not entirely forged. Someone with authority had arbitrarily mobilized reserve troops, completely exposing our flank. An insider at the highest level of the army. My heart beat faster. Hua Xing shook his head. That order required my signature and seal along with the rear supply supervisor. The supply supervisor was a disciple of Wang Bi. To be able to misdirect the entire chain of military orders so precisely, and continuously obstruct the clues Zhang Meng discovered. There must be someone even higher in the court orchestrating everything. It was collusion between insiders and outsiders. In the court, someone embezzled military funds and leaked intelligence. In the army, someone coordinated the forging of orders and missed the critical moment. Their goal was likely not only corruption but also to bury me. The young marquis, whose reputation in the Northwest was growing too strong, and conveniently swallow the Huo family's wealth and connections. I pieced together the clues he gave into a terrifying picture. Hua Xing nodded. In his eyes burned sky-high hatred and unwillingness. My defeat was not due to the fault of war, but man-made disaster. Tens of thousands of officers and soldiers died unjustly, buried in the snow because of the greed of those parasites. The loyal Zhang family was also dragged into disgrace because of Zhang Meng's disappearance. The long-suppressed grief and indignation finally erupted. He suddenly slammed his fist onto the table, shattering it into pieces. I instinctively reached out and grasped his slightly trembling wrist. Hua Xing, we will collect this debt, bit by bit. Zhang Meng will not have died in vain, and the blood of those soldiers will not have been shed for nothing. They want to use schemes to push you into the mud. Then we will dig the truth out from that very mud and drag them down with us. The warmth from my hand seemed to gradually calm his surging emotions. He turned his hand over and gripped mine, his rough palm enveloping it. Wang Bi's assassination was fake, but by using it as a pretext to stir up trouble, he will inevitably trigger an imperial investigation. At least for appearance's sake. I withdrew my hand and quickly returned to the main topic. This is our first real opportunity. We will turn their plan against them and muddy the waters even further. Hua Xing had also regained his composure. What do you intend to do? Hey, put on a play. Then we will help him make the performance even more convincing. My eyes turned slightly cold. Among old Scar's people, aren't there some skilled in the old army's craftsmanship? Let Vice Minister Wang suffer another assassination attempt. This time the clues left at the scene must vaguely point toward another official in the Ministry of War. One who has always been at odds with Wang Bi, and may have been involved in the Northwest military supplies. At the same time, have the old soldiers at Western Mountain discreetly leak to the nearby mountain villagers that they saw several men resembling officials secretly digging and burying something near the abandoned mine. This will frame others, create chaos, and divert attention. Hua Xing immediately understood. And more importantly, it will ignite suspicion within their own ranks. A corrupt alliance fears nothing more than uneven division of the spoils leading to mutual distrust. We need to make Wang Bi believe his court allies want to kill him to silence him, while making the others suspect that Wang Bi is trying to swallow all the benefits and purge anyone who stands in his way. The clues at the abandoned mine will serve as bait for any imperial investigators who come looking. As long as someone goes to inspect, they will very likely discover the old military artifacts we deliberately buried there. Pieces that could link back to the supply supervisor, Wang Bei's disciple. 1 arrow, 3 targets. A cold glint flashed in Hua Xing's eyes, disrupting the enemy's formation, guiding the direction of the investigation, and planting the seeds for a counterattack. But every step of execution must be extremely delicate. One wrong move and the trap could backfire on us. Therefore, you and I must divide the labor. I spread out a rough sketch of the capital's map. You are familiar with the old army's methods. You will handle the detailed planning for the second assassination and every trace we leave behind. It must half real, half fake, able to withstand scrutiny. I will use Zhu Zhenggui's underground channels to spread rumors about Wang Bai's frequent dealings with other officials, emphasizing the conflicts of interest between them regarding the Northwest. And the money? Hua Xing asked, striking straight at the crucial point. Our remaining silver is already running low. After the previous transaction, Zhu Zhenggui seemed to have tasted the sweetness of profit and had proactively sent word. He said there was a southern shipment on the canal that had gotten damp, and he wanted to sell it cheap to clear inventory. He couldn't swallow it himself and asked if we were interested. The profit may not be large, but the turnover is fast and can solve our immediate needs, I answered. Besides, among the old soldiers at Western Mountain, some know how to refine saltpeter, and their craftsmanship is decent. Those second-grade sheepskins, once processed, may not compare to top quality, but they can still be sold to the lower markets for some wages. Open more sources, tighten spending, we can hold out for a while. Hua Xing looked at me, his gaze deep. Your calculations are far more thorough than those of ordinary boudoir ladies. Yet all of it is simply to survive, and to make those who deserve to pay truly pay the price. I answered calmly, that's right. Outside the window, the night grew deeper, the chill heavier, yet inside the study the two of us felt our blood warm from a clear plan and shared resolve. The blade that would break the deadlock had been quietly forged. It only waited for the right moment. The plan advanced under the highest caution. Using their familiarity with military protocols and the capital's back alleys, Hua Xing and Old Scar meticulously designed a failed assassination attempt. An arrow deliberately aged to reveal subtle flaws was dropped in a dark gutter not far from the rear alley of Vice Minister Wang's private residence. At the same time, rumors began circulating among the common people that Vice Minister Wang had been silenced because he held compromising secrets about his colleagues. Meanwhile, through Zhu Zhenggui's underground network, I used the excuse of inquiring about Northwest Wolf pelt prices to approach an old, fallen servant who handled purchases for Wang Bi's outer residence. With 5 taels of silver and a bolt of sturdy coarse cloth, I traded for several seemingly trivial but critical scraps of information. Recently Vice Minister Wang has been meeting frequently with another Assistant Minister Li from the Ministry of Revenue. But after several private discussions, it seems both sides parted on bad terms. Madame Wang once complained that the Li family's appetite was too big. At the same time, at the abandoned mine in Western Mountain, 2 old soldiers with loose tongues got drunk in a nearby small town and accidentally let slip that they had seen officials secretly burying something. Those rumors were quickly guided by the hidden stakes Old Scar had planted and reached the ears of the patrol soldiers from the 5 cities' military and horse department. Those tiny ripples began spreading across the tense chessboard. Sure enough, the 5 cities' military and horse department sent men to inspect Western Mountain. Although they did not venture deep into the mine, the higher-ups had already taken notice. Under the shock of the second assassination attempt and the swirling rumors, Wang Bai grew excessively paranoid. His rift with Assistant Minister Li became public. During one afternoon court session, they even clashed openly over military payroll issues. That same day, Hua Xing returned from outside with fresh news. A censor from the censorate, who is famous for his upright character, has taken notice of the Western Mountain rumors and the dispute between Wang and Lai. He has already submitted a memorial requesting a re-investigation of the old Northwest military supply case. Although he did not name anyone directly, he emphasized the need to guard against corruption that chills the hearts of soldiers. The opportunity has come. My spirits rose. What is this censor's reputation like? Can he be used? I asked. He is quite principled, but not reckless, Hua Xing analyzed. His memorial is mostly out of duty and riding the wave of public opinion. However, he once owed your father a favor. Years ago, when he was framed for speaking too bluntly, your father was the first to stand before the emperor and defend him with a few words. If that's the case, we can find a way to deliver the clues we hold about the grain caravan route at Yahoo Ridge and the fragment of the forged troop deployment order through an absolutely trustworthy channel. No need to reveal everything, just a few key pieces so he can see that this case truly contains injustice worth digging into. Hua Xing pondered deeply. This must be handled with extreme care. Old Scar has a sworn brother who once fought beside him through life and death. The man now works as the lowest-ranking clerk copying records in the censorate. He is simple-minded but extremely loyal to righteousness. We can try once, but we can only send physical objects, no messages. That's enough. I nodded. Send him the secret copy of the forged troop deployment order we prepared long ago, along with the transcription of the 8 final words Zhang Meng sent back. Seal them inside an unremarkable old book and slip them between the pages. If that censor truly has backbone, he will see the weight of it himself. By the time everything was arranged, the hour was already late. After days of continuous scheming, both of us were somewhat exhausted. In the study, the charcoal in the brazier was nearly spent, and the cold slowly crept in. I covered my mouth and coughed softly twice. Hua Xing, who had been staring at the capital defense map in thought, lifted his head at the sound and frowned faintly. He stood, silently stoked the brazier until the flames burned brighter, then picked up the kettle beside it, scooped a little honey from the ceramic jar, and mixed a cup of warm water. Here. He handed it to me. To soothe your throat. A simple gesture, yet in this cold, lonely night it carried a warmth that words could not describe. Thank you. I accepted it. The gentle sweetness of the honey eased the dry itch in my throat. I watched him return to the map. In the flickering firelight, the side profile of his face stood out with unusual clarity. That scar no longer looked ferocious, instead it added layers of sorrow and unyielding resolve. Hua Xing, once this matter here is over and the truth comes to light, what do you plan to do? His body stiffened slightly. He did not answer immediately. Only after a long while did he speak in a low voice. If we are fortunate enough to clear my name and regain military authority, I want to return to the northwest, reorganize the border troops, and strengthen the defenses so that the tragedy of Hu Ridge never repeats. He turned to look at me, eyes deep. As for the capital's wealth and glory, the endless power struggles, those are not what I desire. That was his ambition, and also the road that would take him far away. Then what about the Hu family? I asked softly. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. Since my parents passed, the Hu family has long been a name without substance. If we can turn things around this time and recover the assets, I will reorganize it and entrust it to trustworthy people to manage. He paused, his gaze falling on my face. His voice slowed. As for you, Song Ching Mo, you should never have been dragged into any of this. Once everything settles, I can guarantee you a divorce and return your freedom. I will also give you enough silver to settle down wherever you wish to go. He had already prepared an escape route for me. One that did not include him. My heart suddenly tightened. I set the cup down and looked straight at him. General Huo, do you truly believe I calculated every step and walked with you this far just to beg for a divorce paper and a bit of silver to live in peace? Hua Xing was stunned. From the moment I stepped into the main hall of the Hu family, I no longer had a path of retreat. I stood, walked to the window, and gazed out at the endless night. The Song family has already abandoned me. There is no longer any place in this world where I can sit safely in a boudoir. What I wanted at the beginning may have been only self-preservation and revenge. But now, I turned around, eyes bright as I looked at him. What I seek is justice. It is making those who schemed pay their due. It is reclaiming a clean name with you and a real future. Your ambition, General Huo, lies at the cold northwest border pass. Why can't my battlefield be there as well? I may not be skilled in martial arts, but I have studied geography, calculated military payrolls, and seen through human hearts and ghostly schemes, reorganizing border troops, coordinating logistics, even dealing with the court. There will surely be a place where I can be of use. My words fell with absolute certainty. The study fell silent as a tomb. Hua Xing looked at me deeply. Something gradually lit up in his eyes. The border pass is cold and harsh, surrounded by danger on all sides. It cannot compare to the capital. His voice was slightly hoarse. The capital may be prosperous, but isn't it also a demon cave that devours people? I countered. At least the wind and snow at the border are cleaner. After a very long time, a faint smile slowly bloomed on Hua Xing's face, sweeping away all gloom and fatigue. Good. He spoke only one word, needing to say nothing more. The road ahead was perilous, but from this moment on, we would truly walk it side by side. Several days later, the censor from the censorate submitted another memorial. This time his wording was even sharper. He directly suspected systematic corruption in the coordination of Northwest military supplies and vaguely referenced suspicious military orders that had chilled the soldiers' hearts. He requested that the court dispatch a special investigator to work with the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review for a thorough investigation. Although the memorial was held back and not yet promulgated, waves had already begun stirring in court. The emperor seemed moved as well and ordered an imperial prince of a commandery, known for his fairness, to preside over the review of all related files. Wang Bai, Assistant Minister Li, and the others were clearly panicking. They continuously tried to obstruct and divert, but the cracks within their group had grown larger and larger. They began shifting blame, attacking one another, and their efficiency plummeted. Seizing the moment, Hua Xing and I decided to add one more spark to the fire. Through Zhu Zhenggui's channels we skillfully processed that damp southern shipment, disguising it as specialty goods and selling it at a low price to quickly recover capital. At the same time, the sheep pelts refined by the old soldiers at Western Mountain were traded for some grain and copper coins. Using that money, Hua Xing had Old Scar select a few absolutely loyal former subordinates whose martial skills were still decent. They began operating under the guise of escorting merchant caravans, accepting cargo transport jobs, and moving cautiously around the capital region. One deep night, Old Scar returned with an unexpected discovery. One of his men had helped an old clerk who had been robbed of his travel funds at a post station. Grateful after drinking, the old clerk revealed that he had once worked odd jobs in the Ministry of War's archives. He remembered that last year a series of documents concerning the repair of Northwest post stations had been approved at astonishing speed. Yet in the end the funds did not match the work done, and every official in charge had been promoted. Repairing post stations. Hua Xing's eyes suddenly turned cold. There is a post station road on the rear flank of Yehu Ridge. If they skimped on materials during the repairs and deliberately left hidden dangers, then the grain caravans having to change routes and the army's movements being obstructed would have a perfectly reasonable accident explanation. Just as we thought the situation was finally turning in our favor, Wang Bai somehow traced the clues back to the abandoned mine at Western Mountain. He even dispatched a team of private soldiers disguised as mountain bandits to suppress bandits. In truth, to clean up the remaining threats. Although the old soldiers left behind had withdrawn deeper into the mountains according to plan, one man with a lame leg was nearly captured. He risked his life to escape and returned covered in heavy wounds. At the same time, the Song family finally tore off all pretense. Using the excuse that I had defied orders and was unfilial, they announced my name had been struck from the family register and even attempted to have the Shuntian prefecture investigate me for unauthorized use of my dowry. Although Hua Xing temporarily blocked the latter with the reasoning that a husband had the right to handle such matters, public opinion toward me had already begun to turn unfavorable. Waves rose inside and out. The wounded soldier needed treatment, the secret base might have been exposed, and damage to my reputation would affect future actions. Money had once again grown desperately scarce. Late that night the atmosphere in the study was heavy. Wang Bai is getting anxious, I said. He wants to cut off our escape route and strike at your prestige. Hua Xing looked at the unconscious old soldier, his expression dark. The Shuntian prefecture matter is just nauseating theater. Temporarily not a threat. The key is that the Western Mountain base can no longer be kept. The wounded must also be settled properly. I thought quickly. Zhu Zhenggui has a distant relative in the countryside near Tongzhou who owns an abandoned brick kiln. It's even more remote. We can use it temporarily. As for money, it's time to use the last piece of true capital. What capital? Hua Xing asked. The last truly valuable thing my mother left me. My voice was calm. A phoenix tail golden hairpin inlaid with precious stones, exquisite craftsmanship, clearly an old palace item. I had planned to keep it until there was no other choice. Now is that time. Have Zhu Zhenggui dismantle it. Melt the gold, sell the gems separately, and move them through the black market. That way the origin will be hard to trace. We should be able to exchange it for a considerable sum, enough to get us through this most difficult period and prepare a big gift for Wang Bai. Hua Xing was visibly moved. That is your mother's heirloom. Objects are dead, people are alive. My voice was resolute. If my mother is watching from the underworld, she would hope I use it to do what must be done rather than keep it merely to remember her by. Hua Xing did not try to persuade me further. He only said gravely, "I will remember this kindness." Very soon the golden hairpin was exchanged for silver. We gained breathing space. The wounded soldiers were relocated, and all traces at Western Mountain were carefully erased. At the same time, we used that money to launch another plan. If Wang Bi wanted to use mountain bandits to silence witnesses, then we would let him see the mountain bandits he wished for. Except these bandits could open their mouths and talk. Hua Xing sent Old Scar and his men to carefully capture 2 minor leaders from Wang Bi's private soldier group. After specialized interrogation, we obtained confessions stating they had received orders from Wang Bi to disguise themselves as bandits and eliminate former Northwest soldiers. We also learned the location of a private house where Wang Bi secretly stored ledgers and secret correspondence. The confessions and location were sent anonymously to the desk of the Imperial Prince of the Commandery presiding over the investigation. The blow was precise and lethal. The confessions and clues became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The Imperial Prince acted with thunderous speed. That very night he dispatched men to seize Wang Bi's private residence. Sure enough, they discovered hidden ledgers related to Northwest military supplies and the post-station repair funds, along with several secret letters he had exchanged with court allies. Letters that concealed the crimes and detailed the division of profits. Although the core evidence might have already been moved or destroyed, what they found was more than enough to raise massive waves. The emperor flew into a rage and ordered the immediate arrest and thorough investigation of Wang Bi, Assistant Minister Li, and a series of related individuals. Many officials in the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Revenue were implicated as well. As the investigation deepened, the truth of the Hu Ridge battle gradually surfaced. Tampered military supplies, leaked routes, forged orders, deliberately sabotaged post stations. Each revelation was horrifying. One of Hua Xing's deputy generals was confirmed as an inside traitor. The corrupt officials centered around Wang Bi, for the sake of enormous profit and to suppress others, had not hesitated to collude with the enemy, sell out the country for personal glory, and bury tens of thousands of officers and soldiers. Hua Xing's injustice was finally washed clean. The court issued an edict restoring his title as Jingbei Marquis, returning part of the confiscated family assets, and additionally granting him the position of Zhenbei General. He was ordered to atone through merit by immediately setting out for the northwest to reorganize the border troops and sweep away the remaining poison. As for my father, Vice Minister Song, although he had not directly participated in the core crimes, he had shielded the guilty, known of the plot without reporting it, and even attempted to harm Hua Xing. He was stripped of office and placed under investigation. The Song family's power therefore plummeted miserably, falling thousands of feet. The night before leaving the capital, the Jingbei Marquis Manor finally gained a trace of vitality, yet it still felt empty. In the study, Hua Xing and I sat facing each other. The imperial edict has been issued. We depart in 3 days. Hua Xing looked at me. The northwest is bitterly cold and the fighting has not yet ceased. This journey is filled with unpredictable fortune and misfortune. My luggage is already packed. I smiled softly and raised my teacup. Has the Marquis forgotten? I once said my battlefield could also be at the border pass. Hua Xing gazed at me for a long time. Candlelight flickered gently in his eyes. He extended his hand, palm upward. I did not hesitate. I placed my hand in his. His palm was very warm as he gently clasped mine. On this journey, we will truly face the wind and rain together for the rest of our lives. His voice was low yet carried a seriousness and promise unlike any before. Song Qingmo, are you willing to share the same boat through storms, through honor and disgrace? I tightened my grip on his hand and answered softly, Hua Xing, I am willing. There was no grand wedding, no flowery vows. Yet in this manner once filled with schemes and calculations, on the eve of departure for the cold battlefield, 2 souls who had broken through despair together now bound themselves tightly to each other. 3 days later, outside the capital at the Long Pavilion, Hua Xing, his title and the dignity of a general restored, stood in gleaming armor, imposing and heroic. Beside him I wore simple riding clothes. Old Scar and a group of former subordinates who had sworn to follow him to the death stood ready, along with the old soldiers from Western Mountain, who had chosen to journey with us, forming our initial force. Move out. Hua Xing gave the order. The carriages and cavalry stretched westward in a long line. Behind us was the prosperous yet filthy capital. Ahead lay the harsh yet hope-filled border pass. Sunlight pierced the clouds and shone down on the road before us. the journey of 10,000 miles had only just officially begun. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.